Saylor has made this Monday a very different one. We're used to waking up on Monday morning and seeing Michael Saylor buy more Bitcoin, but today he decided to raise another $225 million of cash and didn't buy any Bitcoin. And this is the second week in a row that he hasn't bought more Bitcoin, but the price of Bitcoin is still grinding higher. But that's not the only reason this Monday is a little bit different. Michael, over the weekend, also weighed in on the potential attack on Bitcoin, which we will discuss more in a minute. But let's start with the news that everyone will be talking about, which is, of course, why isn't Saylor buying more Bitcoin? I think everyone's watching what's going on. It's like, okay, this is actually the to me, the funniest kind of take on all this is like Saylor buys a full clip of Bitcoin at the very top, and at the bottom of the bear market, he's buying dollars. I think he's doing it wrong. That's what most people are saying on Twitter that I kind of agree with here. But again, he's playing a different game than everyone else. What you should be doing is the opposite. You should probably, have some cash on hand when Bitcoin gets a little toppy around all-time highs, and then so you can buy more Bitcoin in this discount. That's what you want to be doing. But Saylor's doing the opposite. Now, why is he doing this is probably the bigger question. You already know why. It is for the stretch product. It is for MSTR. So here is the announcement. Strategy increased its dollar reserves by $225 million as of 7/19/2026. So yesterday, they hold 843,775 Bitcoin in their Bitcoin reserve, and now $3.2 billion in their USD reserve. You know what I just realized? I have not looked at the dashboard here, but yes, lo and behold, that means that now Strategy has 22 months of dollars on reserve to pay for stretch. Again, the market basically said, look, bro, it's not that we don't like your product. What we aren't comfortable with is the fact that you do not have 2 years of reserves on hand in cash to pay back the stretch preferred. So I'm guessing, going out, I wouldn't say on a limb here, but I am guessing that next week, we will probably see another stack of dollars for Strategy. And this does add to the controversy here. I'm not going to lie. It is still adding to one of the things that have gotten Saylor into hot water is the MSTR dilution. Now, if you're an MSTR holder, maybe you don't really care about this, but this is one of those sticking points that a lot of people have been talking about. And he did, in fact, sell 2.7 million MSTR shares to essentially buy those dollars, sell the shares for the dollars. Now, again, to answer the question, why is Saylor not buying Bitcoin? And I will speculate a little bit on, the fact that the Bitcoin price is going up. That is very interesting. And we did get a clip of Saylor back in the day. I'm not going to play it for you guys. I've played it before. But here's Dylan, of course, one of my bros, young kid, Gen Z. He's over at Metaplanet. I think he understands what's going on probably better than most people since he's on the inside. So here's Dylan's take on it. He goes, question, why more ATM sells to buy dollars? Answer, MicroStrategy enters its proper form by getting preferreds back to where management wants to sell them. Tighten the preferred credit spreads and the entire engine will come back alive. Patience. Again, if you are watching the stretch price, which I guess I should have pulled up here, if you're watching the stretch price, it is still not back to $100. This is the longest stint it has been under $100. Again, it's not a peg, it's a par here, so that once it gets above $100, they can start selling to acquire more Bitcoin. It's still under, so it is still being stress tested in real time, right? And I think this is why we're seeing Saylor stack dollars right now. Again, the market basically told him, you need to have 2 years of cash before we feel comfortable with the risk to buy your stretch product. Now, if you do look at MSTR is, it's not doing too bad. Just barely under $100. It looks like it might have, push back any more of its drop here, but under $100, a lot of people are looking at it and probably getting a little bit of a little FOMO into MSTR here. So it looks as of now, that all this moves we are seeing from Saylor in the last couple of weeks is doing one thing. We all know Saylor now. And actually, I'm going to have Fernando, I forget his last name, aka at Base Layer, now with Bitcoin Perception, his product. And he's been covering this saga very good on Twitter. Basically, that Saylor has, in fact, whether you want to say he's been gaslighting us or not, you know, if you want to be cynical, you can say that. But he has, with data, shown that Saylor has kind of changed his tune from saying Bitcoin all the time to morphing to digital assets to now, obviously, very adamant and almost only exclusively talking about these stretch preferred products, or AKA digital credit. So that's the new, I don't want to say shtick here, but that is what they are focused on. It's trying to get stretch back to $100, which the strategy, Fong Lee, Michael Saylor, they've been talking about this on Twitter constantly. He's like, our main directive is making sure that stretch gets back to $100. So the strategy blueprint, the strategy framework here, the thinking is, look, we got to do whatever we can to get stretch back to $100. Hence why they are, if you're being cynical, diluting the MST common stockholders to gain cash so that they can have that 2-year runway. That's what all these moves are. But again, as I mentioned, what is interesting here is that the Bitcoin price is going up. Now, it's obviously not crazy. I think today's numbers, I'm going to do a general vibe check, tell you guys what I'm feeling right now. But we are, or at least yesterday, it got to about 65K. It's roughly around 64 something. What is interesting throughout this whole saga the last 2 weeks is that many of us maybe were misinformed on this idea or just weren't thinking too critical about it. But we all were essentially running on the meme that it's Saylor. Saylor's the reason why Bitcoin didn't go down into 30, 40K here. We have one buyer now in the market, one very high conviction buyer in the market that is scooping up all the Bitcoin. Like Saylor probably did save us from a brutal bear market because this time is a little different. I'm not saying the 4-year cycle is different anymore. Though I probably have a little bit of a different take than the general 4-year cycle guys here. But with strategy in the market now buying in this bear market like he is, I think we can, you know, again, the data doesn't back it up, but we can probably all point to Saylor and be like, look, maybe it's not just strategy themselves, but the Bitcoin treasuries, the ETFs, they are the ones that are keeping the price afloat right now. And now we're seeing that, look, Saylor hasn't bought Bitcoin in a while, in about 2 weeks. And yet the Bitcoin price is still going up, which does confirm what he's been saying. He's like, look, we buy Bitcoin and the price dumps. We sell some Bitcoin and the price rips, which Nico was making the case that, look, it sounds like Wall Street is counter trading him. Well, right now, I won't necessarily say that per se, but what I will say is one of the biggest buyers, you know, the buyers of last resorts, aka strategy, is no longer buying Bitcoin and Bitcoin's still grinding up. That's very interesting when you consider what happens when he starts coming back online and starts actually buying more Bitcoin. Does that mean we already saw the bottom? Does that mean that 60K, you know, what do we always say? You won't buy Bitcoin under 60K again. Now, I'm not saying all that per se again, but it is very interesting. And we have started to see a little bit of the inflows come back online for the ETFs. Obviously, excuse me, Strive's been buying Bitcoin. There is still other Bitcoin treasury companies in the space that are buying probably more Bitcoin than all of us plebs combined. All of us, you know, everyday layman Bitcoiners with our $100, you know, a week DCAs. They're buying more than us. Okay. We are the tail on the dog here. The real capital here is back online from Wall Street, from the institutions, and we're just along for the ride here. But again, that idea of like, wow, Saylor's not even buying Bitcoin and the price is going up. It is starting to make you feel a little bullish, right? You're like, okay, maybe the bear market is over. Maybe we're out of the doldrums here. Maybe there is some light at the end of the tunnel. Obviously, only time will tell. This is a game of patience. This is a game of timing. What you need to do is just continue to buy Bitcoin and wait it out. That's all we have to do here. Sit on your hands. What I think it was it Warren Buffett who said, like, the hardest thing to do in a market is just sit on your hands? if you know you own the best thing in the market, it is incredibly hard to do nothing. And that's what we have to do, is do nothing, except for stack sats, take it in the cold storage, all that good stuff, self-custodying your Bitcoin. But we all do get caught up in the fallacy of overtrading, of doing something. The more I do, the more successful I will be. Right now is not the time to be doing that. Right now is the time to just, keep it simple, stupid. Just continue to buy Bitcoin, continue to acquire Bitcoin, take it into self-custody, and just wait it out. That's all you have to do. It's a lot easier said than done, okay? So that's the initial story. Now, probably the more spicy story here is what I was mentioning at the beginning of the show. Saylor finally chimed in on the BIP 110 fiasco saga. And for you pro BIP 110 guys, I will take your side a little bit here. I will do pro cons. I'm not gonna, I'll try to be as objective as possible on this, but Saylor did chime in on the BIP 110. And I'm not going to read this whole thing because he dropped a mega article on it. And here's Saylor. I don't know. I think this was yesterday. 110 reasons that BIP 110 is a bad idea. So he's taken a very, very strong stance here. He's obviously anti-BIP 110, which I'm sure a lot of, the plebs out there, a lot of the people that are here to protect Bitcoin and back BIP 110 are probably like, yeah, we don't even care about the suit coiners here. Like the suit coiners don't matter. This is what we're trying to do, is protect Bitcoin from the suit coiners. But again, one of the big contentions here is this idea of economic nodes. And one of the biggest economic node in the system, in the ecosystem, better said, just took a pretty strong stance against BIP 110. Now, if you are in the BIP 110 camp, that might entrench you even more. That might make you feel even more conviction in your position. If you are the anti-BIP 110 camp, you're probably like, yeah, duh, this is obvious. Like, I'm not upgrading my node, like it makes perfect sense here. But I will read a little bit, just kind of the summary of this. And then there was an even bigger explosion of BIP 110 stuff this weekend. And again, I'm not the most technical guy here, so I'm just going to kind of relay what I'm seeing, and I'll give you my take, which hasn't really changed throughout this whole thing. Is like, I don't update my node. My node runs perfectly. I'm sitting on the sideline and I'm running, I think it's like version 27 or something like this. Anyways, here's a little bit of this. So he goes, a case for neutral rules, hard consensus, open markets, and permissionless innovation. Many Bitcoiners I respect support BIP 110. They want to keep validation accessible, protect node operators from unwanted costs and content, preserve affordable payments, and keep Bitcoin focused on sound money rather than general purpose data storage. Those are serious concerns. I share the objectives, but I disagree about the remedy. This article critiques the proposal, not the people behind it. I assume good faith. Bitcoin is strongest when we can disagree vigorously without mistaking allies for enemies. Nor is this a defense of every inscription, token, file, or application. Some may be frivolous, harmful, or fraudulent. The question is narrower. Should a disputed use of currently valid fee-paying transactions be addressed by changing consensus? Not every reason below carries equal weight, and several reinforce one another. The case is cumulative. And then again, he goes on to break down the BIP 110 proposal and then adds 110 reasons, which I'm not going to read all of them, okay? 110 reasons that Saylor made for why he's not going to support BIP 110. Who knows, like, how is he able to write this stuff? Maybe it is AI. I know Saylor does have a little bit of the, boomer AI delusion, like everything is AI. So I'm guessing part of this might be done with AI, but everyone, like, I saw our boy Mike Germano basically be like, how does he have enough time to write this freaking mega article about this? Like, how does he have enough time running these companies, making these appearances, and still drop a behemoth article about the technicals on Bitcoin? Like, this guy is really like a polymath here. I mean, he is a rocket scientist after all, right? But going further, something did pop up that was a bit concerning here that I saw over the weekend. A lot of people hand waved this away. But but it does kind of reinforce what Saylor was saying. Again, let me read the part that I want to double down on. He goes, I basically want to keep Bitcoin sound money. These concerns over validation accessible, protect node operators from unwanted costs and content, and preserve affordable payments and keep Bitcoin focused on sound money are serious concerns, and he shares those objectives, but he just disagrees on the remedy. And honestly, from my take of this, I've definitely tried to be as objective as possible. I'm trying to understand both sides of the argument as well, just like everyone else. It does seem, as I've said on this show about my personal stance on this, which is I agree with the thesis here. I am a sound money advocate. I have never endorsed ordinals or runes or inscriptions. That's not what I'm about. But from what I'm seeing, it does look like the proposal, the remedy, as Saylor put it, is just, taking the core camp here, quote, core camp. It does seem like it's rushed. It also doesn't seem like it has consensus. It also seems like maybe the code isn't as strong as everyone's been saying. And this is where the next point kind of comes in that we saw happen over the weekend, which maybe you guys have, a way of explaining this. But we saw Dathan Pone tweet that block slop, aka BIP 110 consensus bug, was disclosed over the weekend. That BIP 110 can leave nodes on different chains. There's a full technical breakdown if you guys want me to post this on the chat. But it goes, today I, Dathan Pone, am publicly disclosing block slop, a consensus bug in the late upgrade path of the BIP 110 activation client. Block slop can leave two Bitcoin nodes on different chains, even though both nodes are running software that says BIP 110 is enabled. The short version is this. Turning on the new rules does not necessarily make the node recheck blocks it accepted under the old rules. One node can therefore keep a historical block that another BIP 110 node rejects. And here's the simple explanation. A Bitcoin node keeps a database of the blocks it has already checked. On startup, it normally trusts much of that saved work instead of validating the entire blockchain again. Reusing that saved validation work is what makes normal restarts practical. Rechecking Bitcoin's complete history over time, a node starts would be extremely slow. BIP 110 adds new rules for deciding whether certain blocks and transactions are valid. Those rules work when a BIP 110 node checks a block for the first time. The problem appears when someone first runs software that does not enforce BIP 110, accepts a block, and later turns BIP 110 enforcement on while keeping the same node database. The upgraded node starts applying BIP 110 to new blocks, but it may trust the old blocks without ever checking it under BIP 110. Imagine changing the rules at a club entrance while never rechecking the people already inside. The bouncer can truthfully say, I'm enforcing the new rules now, and that does not prove everyone currently inside passed the new rule. Block slop is the Bitcoin version of that mistake. So apparently there was a bug found on BIP 110 as it's going to, get activated in about 18, 20 days or something like that. I don't know how many days are in July. Is it 31? So about 19 days or so. Again, I'm not going to read this whole thing, but that doesn't really look good for the BIP 110 code right now. It's definitely a point of concern, to say the least. This is one of those things where you're like, okay, look, again, as Saylor said, the remedy here, from if you are trying to be objective and you're reading both sides, maybe you could say this is core propaganda, but from all of the devs that I've seen that are support or anti-BIP 110 are basically like, look, the code's been rushed. It's been out about a year. Now they're finding new bugs. Yes, maybe in theory we agree with the sound money principles, but in practice, this code just isn't up to par here. And that is a huge concern for you as an individual if you're going to put your entire net worth behind this code. Now, another kind of wrinkle in this saga on BIP 110 is I saw a huge back and forth over the weekend between Matt Crater and Lynn Alden. And Lynn Alden's response was kind of brutal for the BIP 110 guys. So I know some of you guys in the chat are BIP 110. You guys have been yelling at me about it all the time and saying I'm not a real Bitcoiner, whatever. But dude, we're getting to the 12th hour here, and they're still finding bugs in the code. Doesn't look like it has consensus. It truly doesn't look like it's going to succeed. That's just my take here. Do I want Bitcoin to just be sound money? 100%. But it just seems that this proposal is just not the way to go right now. And look, again, I'm not the most technical guy, so this is just my opinions, man. All right. So Lynn Alden and Matt Crater go back and forth. And Lynn goes, the issue is that all the data still winds up in Bitcoin. Op return isn't even the cheapest place to put it. It's just historically the least harmful place to put it. That's why it exists. All of this fork discussion is basically a debate about which bucket to put spam into, since there isn't a proposal on the table to materially reduce spam or materially increase the cost of the cheapest method to spam. That's why I don't bother to talk about BIP 110. It's, she said basically it's lower on my list of things that concern me. People have been hitting her up. She's just like, hey, look, it doesn't really scare me that much. Anyways, she goes, to end this, I support people trying to fork it if they want to. Bitcoin needs market tests once in a while, but if people ask me my opinion about this fork's technical merits, the marketing around it, or its probability of becoming consensus, she gives her opinion, and she's basically saying, like, look, she's not going to support BIP 110. Then Matt Crater comes in and goes, you could always just read the full bit before offering your opinion of it. You clearly haven't read it yet. And this is where like the brutal takedown kind of happens. Lynn Alden goes, I've read the BIP. I'm sure you are aware of the Mott and Bailey fallacy, but for those who are not, I'll explain it here. It's a debating style where you assert an aggressive position and then fall back to a somewhat more defensible position when the aggressive one isn't working, and purposely conflate the two or switch back and forth when convenient. Many leaders of this movement, and by association their followers, have been saying that Bitcoin is under major attack by spam. That is vulnerable to illegal images, that Bitcoin will fail without this fork, that nodes will become unwieldy, or that this fork is absolutely going to happen. That in aggregate is the aggressive position, the Bailey. And keep in mind, this is path dependent. It emerged from the filter movement that spent years trying to stop spam. I know people who have received death threats, allegedly, I probably shouldn't have read that, for not supporting this fork. You should see my inbox and notification of people talking about how this is the most existential thing in Bitcoin, or that'll stop spam or CSAM and preserve Bitcoin as money. That's what many people assert. And when I say, well, no, it doesn't do that, I don't consider this an emergency. And even if it was an emergency, I wouldn't view this as anywhere near being a solution for the emergency. But I'm open to discussions on spam management for the long run. Then people respond by saying, look at the BIP. It's so mild. It admits how limited it is for spam. It's not really about spam, etc. That's a semi-defensible position to fall back to, the Mott. But then great, it's not an emergency. In fact, the reason I have not written about this BIP on my main timeline or in an article is because I read it and it hasn't reached my top 10 things to focus on. By default, I don't support forks under a year old unless I consider them true emergencies so that they have time for proper review. But for those who want to try for a contested fork, I support their right to do so. Kind of brutal, not gonna lie. Also, Walker jumped in on this, and there has been a huge talk, a huge explosion over the idea of economic nodes. I know when I had Tone Vase on, he was talking about economic nodes. You guys freaked out. You're like, oh, he doesn't care about pleb nodes, and it's like that. That is not what anyone is talking about. What everyone is saying is, look, Bitcoin is an economic network. And just spinning up a node doesn't actually add to the network. You have to be using that node to verify your transactions. But further, it's got to have economic weight on the network. And that's where a lot of this contention has happened. Basically, if you are a node and you are verifying a lot of Bitcoin transactions with a lot of money, you do have more impact on the node, on the network. Again, just spinning up a node and not using it doesn't mean anything. That's just how Bitcoin works. Don't get mad at the messenger here. But further, spinning up a node and only turning it on every once in a while to verify like $100 or $1,000 every month or two, it doesn't have the same economic weight that one that is transacting millions or billions of dollars every single day. That's just how the network works. Okay. Now, Walker has taken a very strong stance on BIP 110, and this it's kind of brutal for Luke, especially when everyone is looking for a king in Bitcoin. This is probably the part that's getting me a little weirded out. There's been a weird shift recently in this whole BIP 110. I think as it comes closer to that August 8th activation date, it's like people want a king in Bitcoin. I'm like, wait, I thought this used to be, what was the meme? Like no kings, only rules, or rules and not rulers. And now people are like, I don't know, mental gymnastics to say like, look, I'm okay with a benevolent king. I'm like, wait, hold on. This is getting weird for me. I thought we were here for rules and not rulers. And now I've seen people that I consider friends basically say, no, I'd be okay with Luke being the king of Bitcoin. And it's like, wait, whoa, like, all right, I think we all need to take a break from social media. I think we need to take a step back here. Anyways, Walker, absolutely brutal Twitter thread on this, okay? And here's Walker. Shouts out to Walker. This is pretty brutal. Walker goes, PSA to BIP 110, folks. Here's a thread of Luke Dasher telling plebs that nodes don't matter unless they have economic influence, with a bunch of screenshots. Quote, a node is only as relevant as its operator's economic influence. That was 2021. In 2022, not much, just as its hash rate with miners, its economic influence with nodes. A node that has no influence is irrelevant. In 2022, again, the absolute node count isn't what matters, but rather the enforcement by actual economic activity as an influence-weighted percent. Generally, I would say as long as 85% of people are using their own node, we're probably safe. Going under that starts getting iffy. Going on in 2023, Bitcoin security / trust model is that the economic majority are enforcing all the rules. Attempting a soft fork without sufficient community / node support completely removes this security model and replaces it with one where the miners are trusted. Going further, we have in 2022 again, node operators who actually do economic activity with their own node are the only actors who matter for deciding the protocol. Miners' role is simply to follow that protocol. They have no special say, which I totally agree with. Going further, in 2018, running a node isn't what matters. Economic activity does. 100% of economically relevant people constitutes consensus. If you can't find someone willing to trade with you If you can't find someone willing to trade with you on the same protocol, you cease to be relevant. In 2017, node percentage is not itself relevant to UASF. Economic activity is, and it's too complex for a single number. But the more the barrier. And then we saw everyone, saying like you're taking Luke out of context. But look, the tweets speak for themselves. Those tweets sound a lot like what Tone Vase is saying, a lot like what the pro or anti-BIP 110 people are saying. And I know you guys really want me to embrace BIP 110. Again, I am a sound money advocate. I think that Bitcoin should be sound money. That's what I want Bitcoin to be. But from all of the technical arguments that I have been able to digest, again, 42 IQ, so maybe I'm missing something, but it doesn't seem like BIP 110 can actually solve the spam problem. And further, the implications are even worse for me personally. With the idea that, look, this is not a consensus concern. It's really more a, how do I put it? A cultural view of this, that like there shouldn't be spam on the network. We have to stop this now. And therefore we need to add these changes to fix Bitcoin. But it does add extra precedent down the line that is very concerning, that if again, the general view is that it's like one developer, maybe it's two at this point, Datham and Luke here, and maybe there's more. Again, I've kind of really thought that this was all noise. I personally don't think that spam is going to kill Bitcoin, because I've been saying if spam kills Bitcoin, then really Bitcoin wasn't what we thought it was. if we can have a small minority change the Bitcoin network without consensus, then the precedent being set is not good for anything down the line beyond that. It means that anytime people are angry, they can just come and change Bitcoin. Now, I know there is an ideological view here that, you know, we're here to protect Bitcoin, that we're here to make sure it's sound money. But that precedent does terrify me. I want Bitcoin to be not only just sound money, but neutral and doesn't change very much. That's how you deal with the uncertainty of the world. It's the certainty of the rules of Bitcoin, the protocol of Bitcoin, that it's not going to change too much. Or further, that you don't have to run a node for, 5 years, you spin it up and you're still on the Bitcoin network. And as the Dathan, BIP 110 developer basically said himself, it's like, look, even if you were running an old Bitcoin node and with this bug that they probably fixed, they're probably patching, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're safe to go in the future. That there could be some problems that rear their head, which is obviously a concern when you are putting your entire net worth into Bitcoin. So big weekend here in regards to the BIP 110 debate. I did also see Stefan Libera kind of chime in here. This was 2 weeks old, about Gregory Maxwell, one of the OG Bitcoin developers. Yes, he's at core, but I don't know. He's been a pretty good steward of Bitcoin for longer than I've been around. I would default to his opinion, and he kind of did a brutal takedown as well on it. So look, again, I know you guys want, I didn't pull it up. I know you guys want me to embrace BIP 110. I know, Rustin's been doing good pro BIP 110 stuff. Nico's been doing the hey, you shouldn't care what I run, bro. I've been pretty consistent on my view. It's like, I'm not updating my node. Yes, the emotional arguments, they do get you caught up in a frenzy, but I'm still running core 27, I think. Maybe it's 28. I don't even remember what version I've updated to or what the version I'm running right now. But suffice to say is I haven't updated my node in years. And I really don't plan to. And I literally do this by a heuristic. A new version comes out. A new, I'm blanking on what we call it. A new instance of running a node. There's a word for it, but I'm blanking on it right now. Comes out, and I usually just default that I'm not going to run it for a year, if not 2, for this exact reason. Because I want to see it out in the wild. I want to see people using it. I want to see people debugging it, looking at the open source code. So for me, I'm never in a rush to update my Bitcoin node. And that's just how I've been doing this whole Bitcoin thing for close to 9 years now. I don't rush to update my Bitcoin node. I think that's the fail-safe approach here. You don't have to. It's not like your iPhone where you have to rush to update a new, you don't have to rush to update your phone, to update the software on your iPhone or your computer to make it run better. This is a different game here where I don't have to make speedy moves. And in fact, I would argue that anyone that forces you to make a quick judgment, that just makes me feel suspicious. That's just kind of my default wiring here. So I'm guessing you want to maybe here. I'm not really checking out the chat at all. Still running core 21. Let's go. Let's see. I don't know what this means. I was going to say, I'm sure you guys maybe want to hear what my view of this is. Chandi, yes, Bitcoin really isn't that simple to confirm what you're saying. I think part of this whole thing, and I'm not trying to skirt the question here, but I think what is very interesting is that throughout these process, you do have to kind of go back and understand, like, wait, do I even understand what Bitcoin is? And is my thinking good? You try to make up your mind before you read people's posts on Twitter and all the writings about it. You kind of try to think through the problem, and then you make up your position. And as I always say, I confirm my own bias by reading what other people say. And personally, from my view, a lot of the people that taught me about Bitcoin, I made up my mind kind of about this. I'm like, look, I really don't think that spam is going to kill the network. Do I like spam on the network? Not at all. But I don't think that that's going to kill Bitcoin. And then I kind of was, trying to be as objective as possible, and at some points leaning more pro BIP 110. At some points, which I'm probably the camp that I'm in right now, I'm like, look, I'm just not going to update my node. I'm running, I don't know, core 27 or something like that. A lot of the people that taught me about Bitcoin later come to, and maybe we all have a flawed view on Bitcoin. I'll grant that. They all kind of like, we were all kind of in alignment on this. So look, there are people at Simply that are pro BIP 110. There is someone that's more neutral on our channel that's more neutral on the whole debate. I'm kind of like, look, I like what they're doing. I don't think this is the way. I don't think this is the fix. I'm very interested to see what happens in August 8th. I'm personally kind of leaning towards more like, I kind of want to see it fork because I want an airdrop. Maybe it's just me being greedy. Maybe it's just because I haven't seen number go up that I'm like, look, I would love some free coins right now. Now, I know there's a lot of conversation that's not going to happen, but man, I would so love an airdrop right now. I missed the Bcash one. I got in a little after, but I would love to see one. Anyways, so that's kind of my view on this. Again, not that technical. You guys can yell at me, whatever, but I do, in theory, agree with, I want Bitcoin to be sound money. I want it to be purely transactions. But from everything I've seen, I just don't think BIP 110 is the way. So there's my stance here. I just realized I've been going pretty long on this segment. I am going to do a little vibe check. I do have Efrat coming in, so I'm trying to keep the show going. She'll probably be here by the time the break is over. So anyways, keep it moving. Hold your tomatoes. We can chat about it a little more tomorrow if you guys are really that mad at me. Be right back. Here's the part that nobody says out loud. Buying Bitcoin on an exchange and leaving it there isn't buying Bitcoin. It's buying an IOU. And the last decade has been a masterclass in what happens when those exchanges don't deliver on their promises.
Bitcoin Well is a self-custody Bitcoin platform. That means that when you buy Bitcoin, it goes straight to your self-custody Bitcoin wallet. You actually own it from the very first transaction. They're available both in the United States and Canada. Pricing is transparent, straightforward, and no nonsense. And if you're buying a larger amount of Bitcoin, Bitcoin Well Infinite gives you concierge-level support through a dedicated executive Bitcoin advisor, premium help for when it actually matters.
You can also stack a little extra through the referral and wishing well rewards. A nice bonus on top of the owning your own Bitcoin thing. So go to bitcoinwell.com/simply and sign up for the Bitcoin Well portal today and buy Bitcoin you actually own. Paper burns, paper floods, paper fades. If your seed phrase is written on paper, it's not really backed up. It's waiting to disappear. Stampseed's DIY kit lets you hammer your seed words directly into commercial grade titanium. Fireproof, crush-proof, waterproof, and permanent. Once your words are in the metal, they aren't going anywhere. Use code SIMPLY at stampseed.com for 15% off anything in the store. That's stampseed.com, code SIMPLY. Sorry. Mr. Robot on Rumble goes, Opti, you probably do not have the storage required to store the entire chain. Are you sure it still works? Good question. I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure it's like 8 terabytes on my node, if I remember correctly. Because I did buy the Start 9 Pure, the big one, like the biggest one possible. Maybe I should go check. I'll double check. It still seems to be working with my wallet. It's still verifying my transaction, but maybe good point. I'll go check. Anyways, the current Bitcoin price is 65,410. Let's go. That is a 48.2% discount from all-time high. The current market cap is 1.31 trillion, and the block height is 958,913. So, his node has been down since 2019. No, that's funny. That's funny. Intramelon. That is hilarious. Okay. I'm going to do a general vibe check here. It's Monday. I'm alone. You know, Nico's going to be out all week, guys. So for you, let's do pro Nico lovers in the chat. Sorry, you're stuck with me. For the anti-Nicos in the chat, hey, dude, you're stuck with me. He's going to be super busy with mining disrupt this week. There's going to be a lot of stuff going on. So it's Opti all week, simply Opti. Here we go. And so I'm going to just do a little vibe check here, man. Honestly, with the current price action, I saw Mr. Robot. I saw your post on Friday basically saying like, oh, Opti didn't check with AI. AI said that, you know, wick off accumulation isn't happening. I'm like, look, I don't really talk to AI like that. I use AI when I need it. I don't use AI to confirm my thoughts here. I just, hey, this is what I think. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. If I'm right, well, you'll hear about it, you know, but you'll hear about it both ways. But with this recent price action, I'm starting to get a little bullish, guys. I'm starting, to me feels as if here, I'll pull up the price chart for you guys. We're not going to do TA, though. I do have, you know, my little daily trend line here that's holding up like a champ. Also, my trading view has been acting weird all morning. It's just like not working. I don't know what's going on. It's lagging. Maybe my internet's messed up. Maybe, there we go. The office internet's messed up. I'm kind of feeling bullish, guys. I'm really doubling down on wick off accumulation. I'm really doubling down on what was it? Phase C of wick off accumulation. I'm like, dude, you know, I don't know when, and I don't know how it's gonna happen, but I'm convinced that by like August or September, we're going to get the Omega candle we were promised over a year ago. I'm like, oh wait, wrong one. It's going to, if this price action continues, a little frothy, Mike, I wouldn't be surprised if we get a jump up into like the 74K area. Again, what is my source? I'm the source. That's just kind of my vibes here. That's just kind of what my gut is telling me. It's been wrong before. Obviously, no one knows what's going on with the price. But overall, this feels very healthy right now. And further, I don't know if you guys are following along on a lot of the macro headwind stuff going on. I might expand on that a little more tomorrow. But suffice to say, let me just put it this way. The macro conditions right now are looking like there might be a heavy storm on the horizon. Hold on. Not yet. Sorry, Nico asked me a question. So again, it looks like there might be some pain on the macro landscape, on the macro horizon coming here in the next, who knows when, week, 2 weeks or so. And this morning, I was talking to Luke for a little bit, you know, my Australian friend here, who is constantly bullish. And me and him were kind of getting more bullish just by us talking. And I was kind of saying, and I've said this before on the show, we all have this idea of Bitcoin decoupling. And usually it goes like this, that a Bitcoin decouple looks like everything not moving and Bitcoin explodes higher. That's kind of the, I don't know, cookie cutter view of what the Bitcoin decoupling would look like, is like, you know, stocks kind of do their own thing, but Bitcoin makes an aggressive move higher. And it's just like, it's on its own. It's just ripping on its own. Everything else is kind of going sideways, maybe even crashing. So the decoupling either looks like, you know, traditional stocks and equities, they either go sideways or down, and Bitcoin is the winner and it starts ripping. flipping that idea on its head, considering what I've been reading going on in the Asian markets right now as some of the biggest macro headwinds that are on the horizon, I'm like, what if the decoupling, I think I've said this before on the show, I'm like, what if the decoupling looks more like everything melting down and Bitcoin just does its own thing? Bitcoin stays at around 65K. Could we consider that a decouple? It's not the, quintessential base case or book format of what the Bitcoin decoupling looks like. But I will be very interested in what comes down the line. If the rumors that I'm hearing, and again, I might cover this tomorrow. I'm still kind of making up my mind and trying to think through that process. But if the rumors we are hearing do in fact happen for these macro headwinds that are really going to drag down all of the markets, if we do see a crash in stocks, and Bitcoin doesn't move, to me, that would be very interesting to see. It would kind of show what we've been saying for a while, that the selling exhaustion has gone to the point where there's just no one left in Bitcoin but Bitcoiners, and anyone that wanted to sell Bitcoin for liquidity is already out of the market. So I'm going to be very interested to watch this happening right now, but overall, tentatively feeling bullish. Anyways, Efrat got in right now. So last break, and then we're just going to be chatting with Efrat about, maybe some digital nomad, maybe the digital panopticon that is coming down the road right now. It's not looking that good for a lot of our EU brethren out there. So quick break. I'll be right back.
I want to give a shout out to our partner, Ledin. Here's something most Bitcoin holders never figure out until it's too late. You're sitting on wealth you can't touch without selling. Ledin fixes that. Bitcoin-backed loans. You keep your stack, you get cash. And they just introduced their lowest rates ever. No complexity, no fine print. The larger the loan, the lower the rate. These new rates apply to all new loans, refinances, and renewals. You'll see all the rates up front before you apply. The new, lower rates come with Ledin's gold standard protection. Your Bitcoin remains custodied and is never lent out for interest. Perfect 8-year track record of keeping clients' assets safe. Auto top-ups, LTV alerts, and partial repayments to keep you in control. Repay whenever you want with zero penalties or monthly payments. Ledin's perfect $10 billion track record through every market cycle in the last 8 years speaks for itself. Don't choose between a great rate and the safety of your Bitcoin. Get both at Ledin. If you ever thought, what happens to my Bitcoin if something happens to me? Or what happens if I lose my phone? You're not alone. For a lot of people, the biggest barrier to self-custody isn't buying Bitcoin. It's the fear of making a mistake. And that's why I like Bitkey, and I recommend it to my friends and family. Bitkey is a Bitcoin wallet built for real life. Not just for day one, but for everything that happens in between. Lost devices, upgrades, accidents, and long-term ownership. There's no seed phrase to write down and worry about losing. And no single point of failure that can lock you out of your Bitcoin forever. What really stands out about Bitkey is the peace of mind. Recovery is built in. Inheritance is built in. It's a complete self-custody system built by the team behind Square and Cash App, designed to make holding your own Bitcoin simpler and safer. Take self-custody of your Bitcoin today using Bitkey. Go to bitkey.world and use promo code SIMPLY for 10% off your new Bitkey. That's bitkey.world, promo code SIMPLY. I want to give a shout out to our partner, HIVE Digital Technologies. Fueled by clean energy across 3 continents, HIVE runs dual engines, Bitcoin mining and AI compute. Their AI platform is ranked #1 in the world for network performance, and it's doing something bigger than compute. It's accelerating human discovery, the science, the breakthroughs, pushing humanity further and faster. Listed on the NASDAQ with the ticker HIVE. Catch the latest buzz at HIVE Digital Tech on X or HIVEdigitaltech.com.
You secured your Bitcoin, but did you secure your devices too? They're still broadcasting your location and digital footprint. GPS, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, cell, 5G, EMF, all of it is leaking. Escape Zone fixes that. Their Faraday bags block every signal your device emits, so you decide when you're detectable, not the grid. Built for Bitcoiners who know sovereignty isn't just your wallet. It's your phone, your hardware wallet, your keys, and your entire digital life. Go to escapezone.com/simply and use code SIMPLY for 10% off. That's escapezone.com/simply, code SIMPLY. Efrat, good to have you back. Good to see you. Last time,
good to see you too.
Last time it was we had a little get together. It was great. Anyways, we're here to provide value to the audience. So again, I don't know if we should start with like the more digital panopticon, digital ID stuff or CBDC stuff, and then we ended off with like a more positive spin of like how people can protect themselves. Or so I'm going to give you the floor. Where do you want to start here, and we'll just take that conversation from there.
Well, let's do that. Let's start with the more bleak creep
okay.
on our freedoms, because this is like the current affairs. This is what's happening right now. I've just released an article called The Digital Cage. 2026 is the year they stopped hiding it, because essentially the way I see it is that even if you were quite awake and aware about all the plans that are coming together on the global scale, I think everyone is kind of surprised to see how fast this is rolling out in real life, especially in the West. So Western countries that used to be like the holy grail of what's called liberal democracy and people living their lives in a pretty good standard, and they have pretty good wages, and they can go overseas and they can take trips and holidays. And, these days are kind of are over for many layers of society, unfortunately, because we're seeing the creep of what's called Agenda 2030, the United Nations plan for, I would say, for global control, just creeping in. And since we are about 3 years away from the deadline of 2030, we are actually seeing a lot of the very essential foundational layers of this plan being implemented, rolled out right now.
Yeah.
So if we are looking at, the World Economic Forum's vision to have your digital ID in the center of your life, we are actually seeing in 2026 how digital identity is being rolled out in many ways and in many under different types of excuses or justifications in different types of places around the world. But everyone is kind of rolling out the same framework in lockstep, which is quite similar to what we've seen during COVID. So, if you're really being attentive to the details, you probably are asking yourself, how come everyone's doing the same thing at the same time? How come everyone cares all of a sudden about the children's safety online, and everyone wants to have age verification, and VPNs have become the new enemy of the state, and chat control is something we have to abolish once and for all because it's so dangerous? Like, how come all that stuff is happening at the same time everywhere? And the reason for it is because it's all planned and it's been in the making for a long time. And now it's just being rolled out. So we are feeling it. Everyone's feeling it. Even if we wanted to hide and lie to ourselves and think that, life is normal, life is not normal anymore. I always say that the decade of 2020 to 2030 is that transitory phase between the old world order that we know more or less from the time of Bretton Woods after the Second World War to the new world order that is now coming into play. And I very much concur with people like Simon Dixon, who are analyzing brilliantly, the power structure of the world, looking at the financial, the military, and the technological industrial complexes in the world, and how they're pulling the strings in different directions according to their agendas. And we definitely feel how the change is happening in different places. And I think it's important to take one step back to give context to people who may not know what I'm talking about,
Yeah,
and they're
yeah.
just
Yeah,
thinking that I'm a
that's
little
where
bit crazy.
yeah,
So
that's where I was going to go to the next one. Could you summarize the
right,
2030 agenda, or how
right.
digital
Yeah,
IDs and CBDCs, all of this is
yeah,
combining for people? Because not everyone is up to date with all this
right.
crazy stuff that quote crazy stuff that we're
Yeah,
into. So
exactly. So just so I don't look like a maniac, let's give a bit of context. So it actually started in 1992 with the United Nations plan that was called Agenda 21, and it wasn't 21 because of the year 2021, it was the 21st century. So it was like the big future agenda for how we are going to live life in the 21st century, and all nation states that are members of the United Nations. At the time, it was 170 something. Today, it's 193 countries, are all signed on any agenda or treaty that that is passing at the United Nations level. Now, as we got closer to the deadline, as we got closer to 2015, they actually changed the name and rebranded it and improved it and gave it more detail and more substance. And it was rebranded as Agenda 2030, which is basically a plan that overarches all areas of lives. It's like a grand plan of how we are going to live our lives in the year 2030 this time. And it's basically, if it all covered, it's covered with like beautiful language, and it's all like, we're gonna take people out of poverty, and we're gonna make sure there is peace around the world, and there is abundance of energy and money, and everything that this plan stands for is basically the opposite of what we're seeing being rolled out in our lives. There are just wars, and we're seeing the beginnings of famines and energy crises and food crises, and a lot of different things that are going to lead us to the implementation of Agenda 2030, which I say is basically a totalitarian one world government. And it's a plan to control, to have like inventory and control over all resources and all areas of lives. So in Agenda 21, the previous version was defining that it has to have the inventory and control over nature, plants, animals, resources, construction, production, means of production, food, society at large by installing equity everywhere, water, and of course energy. And basically the main goal of Agenda 21 was to concentrate people in city centers and clear out as much as possible rural areas, so that we can have more digitized control over what people are doing. And so now that we're seeing the digitization of everything and the creep of the surveillance state with an AI layer to do pre-crime and enforce a lot of the digitization of the different systems that we are using on a daily basis to live our lives, it kind of makes sense, because if you're living in a more rural area without any enforcement measures, without any surveillance cameras, without any digital infrastructure in place, etc., it's harder to know what you're doing. It's harder to control you. So they're trying to flock people into more urban areas. I'm sure many of the listeners have heard about 15-minute cities, for example, which is, again, people will say it's a conspiracy theory. I mean, it's happening. It's happening in many cities around the world. There's actually, go check out a website called C40, and you'll see all the different cities that are members of that movement to bring people into digitized smart cities so that we can be surveilled, basically. And a funny point I found when I compared between Agenda 21, that was later rebranded to Agenda 2030, is that at the time they used to use an abbreviation EEG for economy, ecology, and equity in Agenda 21. And in Agenda 2030, they turned it into ESG, environmental, social, and governance. So basically, they love rebranding and they love using all those fancy words to basically boil down to the same thing. We're going to control everything to do with nature, everything to do with the economy or the way we control you. So governance is like, what are the ways that we can control this? And obviously social. So all the social constructs that we have in society. So this is like in a nutshell what Agenda 2030 is. There are 17 sustainable development goals as part of Agenda 2030. You can go to the United Nations website and check out all the different goals. And the 17 goals are basically every area of our lives. There's everything there except for human rights, which is quite funny because, you know, you would expect the United Nations to care about human rights. It does not have its own sustainable development goal, but they pretend to care. So anyway, Agenda 2030 is being rolled out. CBDC, or digitized money, is another topic that is heavily discussed in those forums of the United Nations and the other globalist organizations. There are think tanks about it. There are many different types of World Economic Forum um, little conferences about it, etc. But they didn't define it as one of the SDGs. It's just like it's like the digital ID. It's like crossing all over the Sustainable Development Goals, because as we know, money is an essential layer for the way we live our life. It's like the oxygen we breathe. So the way they are framing or looking at digitized money is that it's okay as long as it can be controlled and tracked and enforced. And so any type of digitized money, which is basically fiat just on steroids, fiat with full digital technological means that it is accepted by the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and of course the Bank of International Settlements. So they are giving their blessings for instruments such as central bank digital currencies, retail and wholesale, for instruments like stablecoins, as long as they are KYC'd and controlled by governments or by central banks, and any type of programmable money. So they can be private stablecoins, not just state-governed stablecoins. And every crypto that is obviously controlled, anything that is KYC'd, AML'd, and you know, we know everything about you and we can stop and we can confiscate it, then it's good for us. Now, Bitcoin is the only instrument that they exclude, of course, because in the quoting the head of the IMF, it is unbacked. So it's unbacked by the central bank. So we can't trust it. Okay. Now they don't like Bitcoin, and that's the only thing that they exclude. But obviously, we're seeing regulation of cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin in a lot of places around the world. They're trying to control the rails to Bitcoin as much as they can. If they have control over that, they'll allow you to play with your Bitcoin. But if it's permissionless and it's non-KYC, it's probably for criminals. That's the way they see it. So that's how the money ties into it. A lot of people are conflating, unfortunately, like in the normie world, they are conflating programmable money and digitized money with Bitcoin, and they think it's the back door into CBDCs. Like, we'll get you all used to digital money, and then we will confiscate it and control it. But the people who are voicing those concerns, which I totally understand, if you're not educated about what Bitcoin is, you may think that. But if you know what holding Bitcoin self-custody is and what are some privacy tools, what's Lightning Network, if you knew all that stuff, and if you knew what the fundamental difference between Bitcoin and crypto is, you probably wouldn't be saying it. But that's a big concern for a lot of people, that, you know, people like me and other good people around the Bitcoin community are trying to like invite them in to the Bitcoin world to kind of protect themselves from what's coming, but they don't want to come because they are afraid of the state and they think that it's a backdoor to CBDCs. So, you know, I spoke a lot. You can stop me and ask me any question. I'm happy to continue.
No,
giving more
I thought
updates.
it was great. I thought it was going good, but there was a good comment here. Let me see if I can find it here. We got Chandi. She goes, "What is the thing I'm hearing? I don't understand what I'm to do based on all this. Hodl or don't. I'm depressed." So maybe now, maybe we get the bleak stuff out of the way.
Right.
Obviously, I agree with you. I don't think it's a conspiracy theory at this point, especially now there's a whole like flock cameras as well that are adding to all the surveillance, and we've seen the public's pushback to that. Of course, we also, we love our Twitter overlords, but we're seeing X Money, the X Everything app, which is based loosely on, the WeChat from China. It's the WeChat of the West. Like, if you're just putting all these pieces together, yes, we might look like, Charlie Day from, It's Always Sunny, and we're like talking crazy, but this stuff is happening. And part of, I think, the message here that Efrat, that I think is like you said at the very beginning, that just most people aren't paying attention because it does get bleak and it is depressing. And you're just like, what can I actually do about this? And then further, the push towards like cashless societies. One of our Rumble chatters is always I don't know why he watches the show. Like, I love you, JJ, but he is he's a cash maxi, and he's always saying like, yeah, go digital money with Bitcoin. Like, they want you to be cashless. And then he goes further. It's like, yo, but Bitcoin won't be controlled. And we're just like, dude.
So why are you here? Yeah.
So with all that, with that, maybe let's start with that. Like what the Rumble chatter would say, if people are hearing all of this and they still haven't been able to separate in their mind the difference between crypto and CBDC and Bitcoin and the push for cashless society, like, what would be your response to that? And then we'll go into a little more like happier, maybe less bleak. Less bleak is probably the best way to put it.
So firstly, I'd get them to look at the issuance, the fact that we have money that cannot be inflated away. That is already a big difference between Bitcoin and all other digital currencies. The fact that we have a controlled issuance and we can never have more than 21 million gives us predictability, gives us stability, gives us the ability to not lose value of our currencies in the long run. And that's the first big deal. The second big deal is the fact that we don't have a Bitcoin office. We don't have a CEO. We don't have anyone that can be locked behind bars. I mean, we do have developers that are being put behind bars because they're developing amazing privacy technologies, but that's a separate topic. The point is, it's very hard to stop Bitcoin. It is impossible, actually. So even if you want to take someone into jail, you can only do that as a deterrence. You can actually not do that in order to close Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is unstoppable in that sense. And that is another very fundamental difference between Bitcoin and everything else when it comes to your freedom. The fact that I'm a digital nomad and I cannot be stopped with my money, that is great power. That is great sovereignty. That is great freedom. And that gives me a lot of more freedom in any other area of my life, because my money is free in that sense. So I think people tend to forget that. That's how I would answer that question. And, people tend to think that, but it can't be that only one thing like Bitcoin can be the answer to everything we are seeing. And I tend to agree with that. Bitcoin doesn't fix everything. It fixes a lot and it helps you gain a lot more sovereignty in your life, but you do need to develop sovereignty in other areas of your life as well if you want to stand tall, firm, and strong in the face of everything that's being thrown at us right now. So I guess that's where I get to the positive part, or to the optimistic part. But before I get there, I do want to add one more aspect which we're seeing these days, which is the AI data centers. And I think it's important to kind of tie that in as well, because as much as I am a proponent of AI and I think that it can help our lives in many ways, I think that the just like the sheer volume of the data centers, especially in the United States, that we're seeing being built right now, is a signal. It's a sign for something. It's not about the retail use of AI. It's not about my use of Claude or any other private AI or ChatGPT. I think it's about the surveillance state. That's what I think. I think that it's no coincidence that it's happening now again at the same time. It's no coincidence that we're seeing a lot of big tech players coming into that game. And it's no coincidence that this huge amount of energy is going to be consumed for that. We wouldn't need, I think, so much energy and um, so much infrastructure of AI if we wouldn't be analyzing so much fucking data. Like, I really think that the fact that the cameras are built everywhere, whether it's on your phones or the flock or any other type of surveillance device, they are all digital and collecting data, and AI needs to run on those huge data sets and create what's called pre-crime or pre-detection of things. Like, this is just how it works when technology becomes stronger, when hardware becomes cheaper, when when you have access to relatively cheap energy. That's what you want to build. You want to automate as much as you can. I used to work for 20 plus years in tech companies. One of them was actually a drone company, drones and AI. And so I've seen, that was before I woke up to the lies of the world and to Bitcoin. And I saw firsthand how, like, what's the evolution of your average tech or startup company that has to kind of beat inflation, beat the fiat games, show value to shareholders. They're all about becoming more and more operationally profitable and effective, showing more productivity, less expenses. And you can only reach those levels, especially as the currency is being debased and devalued. You can only reach those levels with AI. You can only automate your way there. The more automation, the more pre-detection, pre-analysis, the more you let computers do the work and less people do the work, the better your chances are to winning that game. It's a cruel game in the technological industrial complex. So I think it's no coincidence we're seeing the AI data centers being rolled out in this aggressive volume in the United States these days. I think it has something to do with that as well. And now maybe to the optimistic part.
Efrat, yeah, before we get to the optimistic, just to add a little bit to what you're saying is one thing that I think a lot of people either just don't know or completely disregard is, we all heard about the Elon Musk Doge moment, Department of Government Efficiency, he goes in for 100 days, then he's out. And we were all very hopeful. I think everyone was pretty hopeful that, like, oh, okay, we have, an entrepreneur go into the government, it's going to be more efficient. And then
it kills me, because how could Bitcoiners fall for that? We all know that the debt cannot be repaid.
Yeah, 100%.
Like this is 101 Bitcoiner
100%.
class,
But
right?
to add to that, what I think a lot of people either have missed or just never heard is that even though Doge basically, Elon Musk isn't really running Doge anymore, what most people don't know is that, like, that basically got Palantir foothold into everything that the government is doing. So, like, Elon's out, but Palantir is in. And what are they using? They're using AI to make sure that all this information that they are gathering is easily digestible by human and the agencies out there. So, like, it is adding to your point there.
Right. And Elon himself is a government contractor. So for his companies, whether it's X or Tesla with the smart cars and the autonomous cars, he needs that data himself. I'm not saying he stole it. I'm not saying, but maybe he was given some of that data. Maybe there was a deal done there. And so I think it's no coincidence that we've seen all this stuff being rolled out in the last year and a half, and how we end up here in a period where all those government officials and bureaucrats that have zero clue about technology, like it's so funny sometimes seeing their speeches and like listening to them speaking, especially in the EU, they're like so clueless about technology, yet they speak about VPNs and they speak all this stuff. They have no idea what it means. But anyway, it's really funny to see how we got to the point where all those bureaucrats are so confident to talk about technology. And they wouldn't be if there wasn't someone behind them telling them, it's okay, go ahead. You can say that. You can do that. These people know nothing about technology. They did not work 20 years in tech like me. They did not do their bachelor's degree in computer science. They don't know how to write code. They don't know what this shit means. And still they stand there with their confidence and they talk about technological issues that you and I, if you would tell us that they would be doing everything that they're doing right now, starting from chat controls to VPNs to age verification to like really accessing control, accessing controlling the access to the internet, we would tell people that you're crazy, you know, that it's not going to happen. And it happens because they are being told to roll that stage of the agenda right now. They need the digital ID in place. I really like the I'm going to give you a little quote from the article I made. I quoted a really smart guy, Joshua Stillman, that wrote, digital ID is the authentication layer, while CBDC is the currency that runs on top of it. So you stop digital ID and you prevent CBDC from being built at any scale that matters. Now, they need the digital ID right now because it's the foundational layer. Everything else will be built on top of that. So I think, you know, we are going to see CBDCs and stablecoins, which are not very different to CBDCs. They have some nuances in which they're different, but in the end of the day, they can be confiscated and well, they can be stopped. We're seeing a lot of legislation around crypto and Bitcoin in the EU that is going to pave the way to a lot of different places to a lot of different places around the world, like DAC 8. You probably have covered in your show what Bull Bitcoin is doing, for example, in Europe, suing the regulator for what they're trying to do with DAC 8. So by the way, because of the excuse that it's because of the reason that it's a global crypto honeypot, essentially the DAC 8 regulation and the travel rules is exposing so much information about people financially that is a real risk to people's well-being and existence. People are being kidnapped, and you know, we don't need to go into that. People know, listeners of your show, but you know, kudos to Bull Bitcoin for what they're doing. I think that it's really great to see someone pushing back.
100%. All right. The chat's like, okay, I thought we were going to get away from the blink. Sorry, guys. We had to get it all out. Okay. So
we had to.
So now we'll end the show with a little more optimism that there is a way out. So Efrat, obviously this is why you do what you do, is because one, you gotta kind of show people the problem, but you can't just talk about the problems. You need to talk about the solutions as well. So to walk everyone off the ledge, metaphorically here, it's not all that bleak. It's a pretty bleak situation, but we can still protect ourselves is probably the best way to do this. So Efrat, floor is yours. What can people do? What should they be doing? How do you think about solving this problem? Obviously from an individual level, and then if you want to go to like institutional level or government level, however you want to take this. But
yeah, I think it's quite similar for the individual and the institution. And I spoke about it in Madrid at the conference, the Mad Bitcoin conference, where we had a lot of suits in the audience. So I showed my sovereignty framework and how I envision the different layers of that framework and how you can become more sovereign on an individual level, but also on an institutional level. But if we start with the framework, that's also what I presented in Prague. The keynote from Prague will come out, I think, in about 1 week on the 27th of July. It will be live, so you can see my full speech. But just to give it in a nutshell, I divided the sovereignty areas to 3 topics: money, identity, and voice and values. Those are like the three topics in which you want to achieve a high level of sovereignty. And they're the three domains where control gets taken away from you or you reclaim it back. Now, if you look at how to do that, basically you put the money, identity, voice, and values on the horizontal axis of the matrix or the framework, and on the vertical axis you can put the three levels: the spiritual level, the digital level, and the physical level. So if we start, actually, let's start with the spiritual level. So people mostly don't talk about that. It starts with your values, your mission, your vision in life. Basically stopping to ask yourself, who am I? Knowing yourself, and what kind of values do I have? What are the kind of values that I'm not willing to sell out on? That when I'm being woken up in the morning and asked, what is my mission? Why are you waking up in the morning? What are you going to do today that is so important for you? You want to know the answers to those things. You want to actually sit down with yourself and do some work, knowing yourself and knowing what you care about and what your identity is made out of. Because if you don't have that, if you have unclear values and you have a mission that is hollow, that's where distortion can enter. Because when let's pretend you have Bitcoin, let's pretend you have other sovereignty tools, right, that you can protect yourselves with. But if you don't have the spiritual level in place, then you can be distorted or compromised very easily. What do you think happens with all the politicians? What do you think happens with all the Epstein people, right? They are just being compromised because they don't know who they are, and they don't have strong values, and they can be bought or sold for money or for other favors or for other things. If you know who you are and you put that for yourself as a line in the sand, I'm not willing to sell out on that, which is what I'm doing for the past 5-6 years. I want to think, during COVID, I was like that. And during October 7th, after I spoke out, and there are many sensitive topics that I speak about that I get a lot of shit from a lot of people or governments. But I have my values. And the reason I am able to recover from every attack is it's not because of my tools. It's because of my values and my stand, my mission that is uncompromisable. So that's the spiritual level. I call it spiritual. It's obviously, it goes a lot deeper than that, but I think that's a good way in. You can explore, you can DM me if you want to know more. I'm happy to share more resources on that. Now, on the digital level, so we said spiritual, digital, and physical. On the digital level, obviously, it's the tools, and that's where it becomes easier for people. When they hear about all this bleak, doom and gloom kind of future that we're stepping towards, they straight away go, okay, let's decentralize everything. Let's, use Bitcoin. Let's use Nostr. Let's have second passports. But I say first deal with yourself and your identity on the spiritual level. Once you have that sorted, then start looking at the tools. Because if you just go to the tools without looking at who you are and what you stand for, again, you can be compromised. You can be bought for money. You can do stuff that, will not be in line with your ideology of freedom or sovereignty or things like that. So back to the tools. They are important, but they are built on top of the spiritual level. So Bitcoin obviously is, to me, the number one tool when it comes to money. Bitcoin in self-custody, preferably non-KYC. You can do your own mining in a non-KYC manner. You can use privacy tools on top of Bitcoin. You can use Lightning. You can use CoinJoin and other tools if you want to preserve privacy as much as possible. Nostr, to preserve your voice, your identity, your values. When I am being censored on almost every platform, Nostr becomes my safe haven, and I'm building my community there. I've been banned off of Telegram last year, and 8,000 people in my channels were just overnight all lost. So I have Nostr, I have my voice, I have my freedom of speech there. X, yeah, it's great, but again, it's centralized. I am just counting the days to see when something's going to happen where my freedom is going to be taken away from me on X. I don't trust. I verify. And so you want your sovereign stack, whether it's different privacy tools, VPNs, etc., whether it's hardware, privacy on the hardware level. So if you have a Graphene OS phone or, Graphene OS based, Linux based computer, etc., software that is more private, and AI that can run locally and sovereign, I am looking forward to starting that journey for myself. I'm not there yet, and I want to be, so that's something I'm working on for myself. All that on the digital level. On the physical level, it's obviously your jurisdiction, your second passport, second residencies, whether it's for tax purposes or just to have another option if shit hits the fan, and it is hitting the fan in a lot of places. So where you can actually function, whether it's on a legal stand, or on just physically where you can exist, geographically where you can be. And I think that is super important. Your hardware is also physical, so when you run your node and you have your different, your miners, whatever it is you do, you also have to make sure that those physical assets are being secure as much as possible. Every cell in that grid of my sovereignty framework is basically a question to people. Who controls this for you right now? The more of these you own, the more resilient you become to pressure and censorship. And the more you are reliant on custodians or third parties or intermediaries to handle things for you, the less sovereignty you have. So I choose to optimistically look at my life through those lenses. Obviously, we haven't talked about, on the physical level, your food, your resources, your water. And I think the last thing I would add on top of all of that list would be your community. So the people you are choosing to surround yourself with, you should look for like-minded people who you can actually share your concerns with, get help when you need help, have a supportive community. So there are many Bitcoin supportive communities around the world that you can try to move to. And a lot of Bitcoiners are doing that. When I spend time in Argentina, in El Salvador, in Madeira, Australia, even in Bali, I have met so many expats from around the world. Australia is the worst example out of all my list because it's a place where people want to run away from and not to, but these days. But yeah, there are so many expats in all these places I've mentioned. And I think we're going to see third world countries, third world, becoming more attractive than actually Western countries like Canada, UK, Australia, etc. Because, even though some of those third world countries are and will be authoritarian, you can still develop a level of sovereignty if you're living inside a community that shares the same values and the same stuff. I mean, one of the reasons I'm thinking, for example, not to end up like settle down in Bali, for example, is just the really harsh laws they have against Bitcoin. And I want to be able to use my Bitcoin. I want to be able to speak about it because that's what I do for a living, right? So I don't want to have the government, around me just because of the stuff I'm talking about or the money I use. And so I'm looking into places like Costa Rica, Panama, El Salvador, and others, even Argentina, that are more friendly towards that. So I think we all need to start thinking about a plan B, even if you're not moving right now, just to start planning things. That keeps me hopeful because I am moving around as a digital nomad and I'm seeing how people are living, and not everything is really dark. Like there is a lot of beauty in the world, beautiful communities, beautiful places where the governments have not lost it completely. I tend not to trust politicians very much. But there are some places where I see that the government is not yet in full control of all areas of life, and you can still maneuver and navigate your life to create bubbles of freedom and sovereignty. And I think that's where people should draw their hope from. So.
Absolutely love it, Efrat. We'll give you some horns on that one. Obviously, we could probably stay here for like 2 more hours talking about this, but I think that was a good kind of I know, summary, entry level into all the work you're doing. So on that note, Efrat, I would love to allow you to plug all your socials here. So if the audience loved what you were saying, if they want to get, more longer form conversations about this, because this is what Efrat does, guys. So plug your socials so the people can go follow your work and, lead them wherever you want.
Find me on Twitter on Fenigson, same handle on Instagram, Nostr, my name. And my blog is efrat.blog. That's where you can get a longer form or a lot of resources that I put for free. You can subscribe for free to my newsletter. And my podcast, of course, is You're the Voice, where I have beautiful conversations with beautiful freedom lovers and truth tellers from around the world. Almost 150 episodes now. So going strong.
Well, congratulations, Efrat. Usually most podcasters stop after 20. So 150 is no small feat, okay? Guys, highly recommend you go check out Efrat's work. Obviously, we are not a full long form show. So if you like these conversations, go check out Efrat. She's covering this daily. This is what she does, all right, guys? So we're not going to scare you too much. You might get a little bit of the bleak, but there's solutions here.
Hey, another great hopeful note to end on. You guys, kudos to you for screening Hummingbird, the story about Costa Rica. I think that is the kind of content that can really give people hope when they see how people live. That's exactly what I was talking about, and simply took the movie and screened it. So I highly recommend. I watched the movie. It's incredible. Go watch it. It's really good.
Well, thank you, Efrat. Yeah, guys. Check it out. I'm pretty sure it's still pinned on our YouTube. So go to our homepage. It's pinned on the top. Check it out. Watch it tonight with your family.
Last time I checked, you had more than 10,000 views. I don't know where you're at right now, but it was.
Yeah, that was what, 2 days. So
2 days ago.
Guys, go watch it if you haven't watched it yet. Thank you, Efrat, for that. And that's exactly what Efrat is covering. That's what all her work is. Maybe that's a good entry into all of the work that you're doing. Go watch the Hummingbird.
Paul, for example. Paul is the producer of the movie, and I just interviewed him a few weeks ago. So it's out there on my podcast, and we're talking about the movie. We're talking about life in Costa Rica. Like, that's the kind of conversations I love having, the kind of real life conversations about how you live your life as a sovereign individual, how you create more freedom around you, and how you bring the beauty and the grace to life again.
I think that's the way to end it. Guys, you got to remember, no matter how dark it gets, they were joking earlier. This is Bleaky Blinders, a pun on Peaky Blinders. But hey, this is the bleak midwinter, guys. We're in the dark ages here. So there will be light at the end of the tunnel. The good guys will win, but it will take some effort.
We got this. We are winning.
Let's go. We are winning. Let's go. All right, guys. Efrat, thank you so much for coming on the show. I truly enjoyed that. Actually, another little joke. Someone on Rumble was like, I think Nico needs to hear this, not Opti. So that was a good one, Kudos.
We're going to make sure Nico hears this. Opti, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming on. Really appreciate your work. We love what you're doing. Thanks for plugging the documentary for us. I didn't have to do it. So thank you so much, Efrat. It was a pleasure. Until next time, either, a dinner like we did last time, or we'll just bring you back on the show.
Awesome. See you soon.
All right. See you soon. Efrat, guys, go check out Efrat's work. Go check out her podcast, You're the Voice. Rewind it, get all her socials. On that note, guys, again, reminding you, this will be a Simply Opti week. I will be in the studio all week long. I do have a couple of guests I think you're going to like for this week, but it will be just me this week, all right? I'm holding down the fort. Why we are also going to be streaming the Mining Disrupt Conference for you guys. So if you guys want to watch that will also be on our YouTube channel. But this week, nothing's changing for us here on the Daily Live Show. Same time as always. Same thing as always. All right, guys. So I'll have a show for you guys every single day of the week. It's just going to be me. So if you're pro Nico, you got to suffer through me. If you're pro Opti, Hey, this is the times we used to pray for times like this. All right. Anyways, guys, have a good rest of your day. I will see you tomorrow. As always, you already know the deal. Kind of piggybacking off what Efrat says. What do I always say? You gotta get yourself spiritually right, financially right, and physically right. All wrapping it up. Got a little extra details with Efrat, but as always, get some sun in the morning, get a workout in, eat good food. We got to lock in, guys. We got to ascend in 2026. Time is running out for the ascension of this year. But it's got to be priority number one, all right? And of course, stack some sats, take it into cold storage. It's your boy Opti. I'll see you tomorrow. Peace out.
Today's episode was brought to you by BitcoinWell.com, a Bitcoin-only platform on a mission to enable financial independence.